Washington, AP, President Donald Trump presented a distorted picture of the auto industry, told a fanciful story about Iran duping Barack Obama and took a misinformed swipe at Puerto Rico just as its residents braced for a catastrophe that didn't come. Look at some statements by Trump and his team during a week bookended by the Group of Seven summit and the approach of Hurricane Dorian to the U.S. mainland after it brushed past Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Puerto Rico on hurricane aid, will it ever end? Congress approved $92 billion for Puerto Rico last year, an all-time record of its kind for anywhere, tweet Tuesday. Trump, on Puerto Rico, Congress approved billions of dollars last time, more than any place else has ever gotten, tweet Wednesday. The facts, his figure of $92 billion is wrong, as is his assertion that the U.S. territory has set some record for federal disaster aid. Congress has so far distributed only about $14 billion for Puerto Rico. It's a false claim he's made repeatedly. The White House has said the estimate includes about $50 billion in expected future disaster disbursements that could span decades, along with $42.7 billion approved. $50 billion in additional money, however, is speculative. It's based on Puerto Rico's eligibility for federal emergency disaster funds for years ahead, involving calamities that haven't happened. That money would require future appropriations by Congress. Even if correct, $92 billion would not be the most ever provided for hurricane rebuilding efforts. Hurricane Katrina in 2005 cost the U.S. government more than $120 billion, the bulk of it going to Louisiana. Trump frequently inflates and complains about the amount of disaster aid that Congress foolishly gave Puerto Rico after the deadly destruction from Hurricane Maria in 2017. He has talked as if he doesn't recognize the U.S. territory as American and, in an April tweet, said Puerto Rico officials only take from USA. Hurricane Dorian inflicted limited damage in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands before intensifying on its track toward the U.S. mainland. ___AUTOSTRUMP, General Motors, which was once the giant of Detroit, is now one of the smallest auto manufacturers there. They moved major plants to China before it came into office. This was done despite the saving help given them by the USA. Now they should start moving back to America again, tweet Friday. The facts, that's inaccurate on several counts. Still a giant, GM did not close factories in the US and move them to China. It set up and expanded operations in China primarily to serve that market. And by many measures, it is the largest U.S. automaker. The company made more money last year than crosstown rivals Fiat, Chrysler and Ford, and GM sold more vehicles in the U.S. than the other two. It remains the largest Michigan-headquartered employer in the state, with a workforce of 52,000 outpacing that of Ford, the state government and Fiat Chrysler, according to an analysis this year by Crain's Detroit Business. In southeast Michigan, it was no. 2, behind Ford, and ahead of Fiat Chrysler, North Koreabice President Mike Pence, watching those 55 small, flag-draped caskets come off the plane was an extraordinary experience. We brought back our heroes, and there's more to come, remarks Wednesday to the American Legion Veterans Group. The facts, no remains of U.S. service members have been returned since last summer and the U.S. suspended efforts in May to get negotiations on the remains back on track in time to have more repatriated this year. The U.S. hopes more remains may be brought home next year. The Pentagon's Defense POMI accounting agency, which is responsible for recovering U.S. war remains and returning them to families, has not received any new information from North Korean officials regarding the turnover or recovery of remains, spokesman Charles Pritchard said last month. He said his agency is still working to communicate with the North Korean army, as it is our intent to find common ground on resuming recovery missions in 2020. Last year, in line with the first summit between Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un that June, the North turned over 55 boxes of what it said were the remains of an undetermined number of U.S. service members killed in the North during the 1950-53 war. So far, 6 Americans have been identified from the 55 boxes. U.S. officials have said the North has suggested in recent years that it holds perhaps 200 sets of American war remains. Thousands more are unrecovered from battlefields and former POW camps. The Pentagon estimates that 5,300 Americans were lost in North Korea. Trump on North Korea's leader. With respect to North Korea, Kim Jong-un, who I've got to know extremely well. The First Lady has gotten to know Kim Jong-un and I think she'd agree with me. He is a man with a country that has tremendous potential. News conference Monday with French President Emmanuel Macron. The facts: Melania Trump doesn't know Kim. They have never met. White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham clarified the president's comment, saying Trump confides in his wife on his relationship with Kim and feels like she's gotten to know him, too. ___IRANTRUMP on Iran, we gave them $150 billion and $1.8 billion and we got nothing. ... Look at what they did to John Kerry and to President Obama. Look what happened, where they're bringing planeloads of cash, planeloads, big planes, 757s, Boeing 757s coming in loaded up with cash. What kind of a deal is that? News conference Monday with Macron. The facts: it's the kind of deal that did not actually take place. When Iran signed the multinational deal to restrain its nuclear development in return for being freed from sanctions, it regained access to its own assets, which had been frozen abroad. There was no $150 billion gift from the U.S. Treasury or other countries. Iran was allowed to get its money back. The $1.8 billion refers to a separate matter, also misstated by Trump going back to before the 2016 election. A payout of roughly that amount had come from the U.S. Treasury. It was to pay an old IOU. In the 1970s, Iran paid the U.S. $400 million for military equipment that was never delivered because the government was overthrown and diplomatic relations ruptured. After the nuclear deal, the U.S. and Iran announced they had settled the matter, with the U.S. agreeing to pay the $400 million principal along with about $1.3 billion in interest. $400 million was paid in cash and flown to Tehran on a cargo plane. The arrangement provided for the interest to be paid later. In Trump's telling, one cargo plane with $400 million that was owed to Iran has become big planes, 757s, Boeing 757s, loaded with a $1.8 billion giveaway. Kerry was then Secretary of State, ___clean AIRTRUMP, we're, right now, having the cleanest air and cleanest water on the planet, remarks Monday with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The facts: that's not true. Air quality hasn't improved under the Trump administration and dozens of nations have less smoggy air than the U.S. water. One measure, Yale University's Global Environmental Performance Index, finds the U.S. tied with 9 other countries as having the cleanest drinking water. But after decades of improvement, progress in air quality has stalled. Over the last 2 years the U.S. had more polluted air days than just a few years earlier, federal data show. There were 15% more days with unhealthy air in America both last year and the year before than there were on average from 2013 through 2016, the 4 years when the U.S. had its fewest number of those days since at least 1980. The Obama administration set records for the fewest air-polluted days. The nonprofit Health Effects Institute's State of Global Air 2019 report ranked the United States 37th dirtiest out of 195 countries for ozone, also known as smog, worse than the global average for population-weighted pollution. Countries such as Britain, Japan, Spain, Portugal, France, Germany, Albania, Cuba, Russia, Vietnam, New Zealand and Canada have less smoggy air. The U.S. ranks 8th cleanest on the more deadly category of fine particles in the air. On environmental quality overall, the AIL index put the U.S. 27th, behind a variety of European countries, Canada, Japan, Australia and more. Switzerland was no. 1____ENERGYTRUMP. I feel that the United States has tremendous wealth. The wealth is under its feet. I've made that wealth come alive. We are now the #1 energy producer in the world. News conference with Macron. The facts, sole credit to himself, is not accurate. The greatest energy revolution of the past half-century happened on Obama's watch as U.S. petroleum and natural gas production achieved preeminence. In 2013, the U.S. became the world's top producer both of natural gas and petroleum hydrocarbons, says the government's U.S. Energy Information Administration. As for crude oil specifically, the agency says the U.S. became the world's top crude oil producer last year. That is largely attributed to the shale oil boom that began late in George W. Bush's administration and proceeded apace during the Obama years. The boom came because of fracking and other technology, such as horizontal drilling, that made it possible to find much more oil and gas without drilling more holes. As well, Obama lifted a decades-long ban on shipping U.S. oil overseas in 2015, helping increase demand for U.S. crude. ___Trump. On addressing climate change, I feel that the United States has tremendous wealth. The wealth is under its feet. I'm not going to lose it on dreams, on windmills, which frankly aren't working too well. News conference with Macron. The facts, in criticizing wind power, Trump misidentified his target. Wind turbines produce energy. Windmills mill grain and flummox Don Quixote. Trump has ascribed a variety of evils to wind power over the years, usually with scant evidence, while praising coal, a well-documented cause of health problems. Associated Press writers Tom Krisher in Detroit and Robert Burns, Jill Colvin, Josh Boak and Michael B. Secker in Washington contributed to this report. Find AP fact checks at http://opni.ws/2kbx8bd. Follow at App Fact Check on Twitter, https://twitter.com/appfactcheck. Single quote S block ads.